one request. One night. My entire world shifted the moment my wife, Sarah, told me she needed something more. What followed would be something I'd never forget, and it changed my life forever. Sarah, my wife of nearly a decade, said she wanted an open marriage, but I gave her a harsh dose of reality that would ultimately end things between us. At 33, Sarah was breathtaking, with her cascading auburn hair and intense blue eyes that could draw anyone in. She worked as a second-grade teacher at an elementary school in Austin, Texas. Her passion for teaching was one of the things I admired most about her. But recently, she blindsided me with a shocking suggestion. She wanted to start seeing other people while we were still married. She didn't try to soften the blow or sugarcoat her words, leaving no room for misinterpretation. I'm Eric, a 47-year-old forensic accountant, and I've always taken pride in being a dependable provider. I work tirelessly to ensure our financial security, and I made it my mission to give Sarah anything she ever wanted. But this request, it shook me to my core. It felt like everything I believed in, everything I had built, was crumbling beneath me. Hoping to save our marriage, I arranged an elegant dinner at Juniper Table, one of the nicest restaurants in the city where we'd celebrated countless anniversaries. I booked the best table, the one with an incredible view of the city's skyline just as the sun set. The white linens were crisp and pristine, and the wine list was full of top-notch selections. I even surprised her with a necklace she had been eyeing for months, a delicate gold chain studded with small diamonds. It set me back nearly $1,500, but that money was something I'd soon regret parting with. Throughout dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Usually, Sarah and I would talk excitedly about our days or whatever was on our minds, but tonight was different. The air between us was thick with tension. She seemed distant, distracted even, her eyes darting around the room like she was looking for someone else. Normally, when she looked at me, there was warmth in her gaze, but tonight it felt like I wasn't even there. We had just finished our entrees and ordered a second bottle of wine when she finally broke the heavy silence. Eric, there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about for a while now. I think tonight is the right time, she said. I set my wine glass down, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. Her tone was serious, and this was clearly not just some small talk. My mind raced, thinking maybe she wanted to bring up starting a family. We had discussed it before but decided to wait until our careers were more settled. But her avoiding my eyes told me this wasn't about having kids. She took a deep breath, her voice shaking slightly as she spoke. I need to figure out who I am outside of us. I think it will make me a better partner in the long run. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my pulse quickening. What are you trying to say? I asked, doing my best to keep my voice steady, though deep down, I had a sinking feeling I already knew. She couldn't look me in the eye, and that only made the dread inside me grow stronger. I want to see other people, Eric. I think we need to have an open relationship before resentment sets in. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. The cozy, refined ambience of Juniper Tables suddenly felt suffocating. The gentle hum of conversations around us faded into white noise as the gravity of her words sank in. This wasn't just a casual suggestion. This was the possible unraveling of everything we had built together. I tried to comprehend what she was saying, but my thoughts were spinning in disbelief. You want to date other men? And you expect me to be okay with that? My voice rose slightly, tinged with frustration. Sarah, how am I supposed to just accept something like that? I could feel my anger rising as I pulled my hand away when she reached for it across the table. Eric, I love you. That hasn't changed, she said softly, her voice filled with pleading. But I need to explore this part of myself. After a few months, I'll come back to you, and we'll be stronger because of it. Her words hung in the air, offering no real comfort. Could I even accept this? Could our marriage survive something like this? The question swirled in my mind as I stared at the woman I thought I knew so well. But now, she seemed like a stranger. I don't know if I can do this, Sarah, I said, my voice quieter now, disbelief beginning to replace the anger I had felt moments earlier. You're asking me to sit back and watch while you date other men, and then what? We just go back to how things were like nothing happened. It's not like that, she replied, her voice soft as her eyes begged me to understand. I'm not leaving you. I just need some time to figure things out. I love you, and I still see us starting a family someday. But first, I need to discover who I am. It was clear her mind was already made up. Her sudden emotional distance, the way she couldn't meet my gaze, it all made sense now. Without even thinking, I stood up abruptly, tossing my napkin onto the table. I need to get out of here, I muttered as I pushed my chair back and quickly walked away. Eric, where are you going? Sarah called after me, but I didn't stop. You can find your own way home. I tossed back over my shoulder as I strode out into the warm Texas night. The sounds of the city buzzed around me, but I barely noticed. I jumped into my car and drove, not even knowing where I was headed, just needing to escape the suffocating weight of what had just happened. Eventually, I found myself outside the Silver Creek Diner, a quiet place on the outskirts of Austin where I'd always gone to clear my head. I ordered a black coffee and slid into one of the corner booths, staring out the window at the cars passing by. Their headlights reflected on the glass as I tried to make sense of everything. Could I really live with Sarah seeing other men? Was this the end of our marriage or just some cruel test of my loyalty? The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't something I could accept. If Sarah needed to explore other relationships, she was going to have to do it without me. The next morning, I woke up in my car, still parked outside the diner. My neck ached from spending the night in the driver's seat. Groggy and stiff, I stretched, hoping for a second that the events of the night before had been just a bad dream. But when I checked my phone, the missed calls and texts from Sarah reminded me it had all been painfully real. She had been worried, wondering where I had gone, but I wasn't ready to face her, not yet. I drove over to Austin Fitness Center, the gym I frequented, hoping a workout would clear my head. As I pounded away on the treadmill, my thoughts circled back to Sarah's words. This wasn't some temporary issue. It was a betrayal of everything we built. No matter how much she tried to dress it up, I knew what it really meant for us. After finishing my workout, I hit the showers, then sat in my car in the gym's parking lot, staring blankly at the dashboard. How was I supposed to go home and act like everything was normal? I knew I had to confront Sarah, but I wasn't sure I was ready for the conversation that was coming. Grabbing a quick breakfast back at Silver Creek Diner, I finally decided it was time to head home. When I pulled into the driveway, Sarah was already standing at the front door, waiting for me. Her face was a mix of worry and regret. Eric, where were you all night? I was scared something had happened, she said, reaching out to touch my arm as I walked past her and into the house. I need a shower, I muttered coldly. After that, we'll talk. I headed straight to the bathroom, peeling off my gym clothes and stepping into the hot shower. For a brief moment, the warm water was a welcome distraction from the chaos that had become my life. But as the steam filled the room, the questions came rushing back. How had we gotten here? Was this really the end of everything Sarah and I had built together? When I finally emerged from the bathroom, feeling slightly more composed, I found Sarah sitting at the kitchen table, her hands clenched tightly together in front of her. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her, ready to face the conversation I'd been dreading. I took a long sip of my coffee, keeping my eyes on her. Explain it to me again, why you feel the need to have relationships outside of our marriage, I said, my voice calm, though frustration still simmered underneath. Sarah sighed, her fingers nervously playing with the napkin in front of her. Eric, I've already told you. I feel like I've lost myself. I don't know who I am anymore, outside of US, and I need validation in ways I can't even fully explain. This is something I have to explore, not because I don't love you, but because I don't know who I am anymore. And you think the way to figure that out is by dating other men? I asked, disbelief seeping into my words. You're asking me to sit back while you go find yourself with other guys? Her voice trembled as she replied. No, Eric. I don't want to leave you. I just need some space, some freedom to explore this, while we're still together. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a bitter laugh. So, you want to have your cake and eat it too? You want to go off, explore your needs, and then come back to me like nothing ever happened? Sarah's eyes fell to her lap, her voice barely a whisper. It's not like that. I just need time. Time for what? I demanded, the frustration bubbling up again. Time to sleep with other men while I wait around? How long am I supposed to give you to figure this out? I don't know, she admitted, her voice cracking. A few months, maybe longer. I just need to find what's missing inside me. I took another sip of my coffee, the bitterness cutting down my throat as I tried to process what she was saying. And what about us? I asked. Do you expect me to just stay your husband while you're out seeing other men? Of course, she said quickly, her eyes wide with desperation. Eric, we're still a family. I love you, and I don't want to lose that. I just need this time to figure myself out. I shook my head in disbelief. How often are you planning to do this? Every weekend? A few times a week? What does my life look like while you're out on dates and, let's be honest, sleeping with these men? Rachel shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. Well, I need to know, I said firmly, my voice growing colder. Because if this is what you want, you're going to have to move out. I'm not living under the same roof while you're seeing other men. Her face fell, the shock of my words hitting her like a slap. Move out? Ryan, where would I even go? That's for you to figure out. I shot back. Maybe you can stay with Lindsay for a while. You're close enough with her. But you're not doing this here. And if you're serious about it, you'll need to cover your own expenses, rent, bills, everything. I'm not supporting you while you're dating other men. Rachel stared at me, her lips trembling as if she couldn't believe what I was saying. Maybe she thought I'd be too passive, too compliant to push back. Ryan, I've made myself clear, I continued, leaning forward, my tone unyielding. If you want an open marriage, you can't stay here. You'll need to move out and make your own arrangements. For a moment, she was silent, her eyes wide as if testing how far she could push this. Then, slowly, she nodded. I'll stay with Lindsay for a while, I guess, but I don't want this to be permanent. I still want us to work. I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. Rachel, this isn't just about staying together. It's about what happens after you do this. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at you the same way again. Her face softened, and her voice quieted. I'll come back, Ryan. And when I do, I'll be ready to start a family with you. I just need this time to figure myself out. Her words felt hollow, as if she truly believed we could return to normal after everything. But I knew better. Our relationship had been fractured in a way that couldn't easily be repaired. And what am I supposed to do in the meantime? I asked, feeling the anger rise again. Sit here and wait for you to finish finding yourself? You expect me to just remain faithful while you're out with other men? Her eyes darted to mine, and her lips quivered as she whispered. I want you to stay my husband. You don't need anyone else. I'm still yours. I stood up, my frustration boiling over. That's not how this works, Rachel. You can't expect me to sit here, waiting for you while you're off with whoever you want, and then come back like nothing happened. That's not love, and it's definitely not marriage. She flinched at my words but didn't back down. I know it sounds crazy, but I need to do this for me. I don't want to hurt you, Ryan, but this is something I have to explore before we settle down and have kids. Then you need to leave, I said, my voice hard as I walked toward the door. Pack your things and figure out where you're going. You can't stay here while you're doing this. For a moment, Rachel sat in stunned silence, the weight of my words sinking in. Slowly, she nodded, standing up. I'll pack some things and stay with Lindsay for now, she said, her voice barely audible. As she walked past me, heading upstairs to gather her belongings, I felt a strange emptiness in my stomach. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. We were supposed to be happy, building a life together, not tearing it apart for her so-called self-discovery. Later that evening, after Rachel had packed a few bags, she stood by the front door, hesitating. Are you sure about this? She asked, her voice softer now, almost vulnerable. "Can't we just talk about it more?" I looked at her, the woman I had once loved so deeply, but now all I felt was a hollow sadness. "There's nothing left to talk about, Rachel. You've made your choice." Without another word, she turned and walked out the door. I watched as she drove away, the taillights disappearing into the night, leaving me standing in the doorway of a house that no longer felt like home. The next few days passed in a blur. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the emptiness that now filled the house. Every room felt cold and hollow without Rachel's presence. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. How had my life unraveled so quickly? But I knew I couldn't keep wallowing in self-pity. I had to move forward. A week later, I decided to return to one of my old hobbies, cycling. I used to ride regularly before life and work became too consuming. I joined a local cycling group that met at Oak Valley Trails, a scenic spot just outside of Austin, popular with cyclists from all over the city. It felt good to get back on the bike, the long rides helping to clear my head. That's where I met Hannah, a nurse who worked at a nearby children's hospital. She was new to the group, and we struck up a conversation during one of the rides. Hannah had an easygoing, warm personality, and as we rode together more often, we found ourselves sharing stories about our lives. She, too, had gone through a rough breakup not long ago, and we bonded over our shared experiences of trying to move on. Soon, we started meeting up for rides outside of the group. There was something refreshingly simple about being with Hannah. She had a contagious laugh that made our rides feel lighthearted, and before long, we began meeting at the Hideout, a cozy bar in a quiet part of town, after our rides for drinks and conversation. One evening, over beers and appetizers, we talked about her work at the hospital, the emotional toll it sometimes took on her, and how she found ways to cope. I shared parts of my story with her, though I kept the details about Rachel vague. I wasn't ready to dive too deep into the mess of my failed marriage. But Hannah's gentle understanding made it easier to open up, little by little. At one point, she reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. "You don't have to explain everything now, Ryan," she said softly, her voice reassuring. "I understand. Some things take time." Her touch caught me off guard, not just because of the comfort it brought, but because it was the first time in a long while that I felt connected to someone again. When the night ended, I walked her to her car, and before she got in, she kissed me. It wasn't rushed or desperate, it was gentle, full of warmth, and it stirred something inside me I hadn't felt in months. That night, as I drove home, my mind raced. Could I really be moving on from Rachel so quickly? Was it too soon? But the spark I felt with Hannah was undeniable. The following weeks were filled with more rides, more dinners, and longer, easy conversations that flowed naturally. One Saturday, Hannah suggested we do something different, kayaking at Lake Travis, just outside of Austin. I hadn't been kayaking in years, and Hannah, though a novice, was excited to give it a try. We spent the afternoon paddling around the serene waters, laughing as she struggled to keep her balance in the kayak. It was a light-hearted escape, a stark contrast to the strained moments I had been used to with Rachel. With Hannah, there were no unspoken expectations, no emotional tension, just two people enjoying each other's company. As the sun began to set, we pulled the kayaks ashore and sat by the water's edge, sharing a small picnic Hannah had packed. The sky turned a soft orange and pink as the day faded into twilight, and she rested her head on my shoulder. For the first time in months, I felt a peaceful calm wash over me, a kind of contentment I hadn't known since everything with Rachel had started to unravel. But even in this serene moment, my mind wandered back to Rachel. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the life we had built together, and the one I was now leaving behind. Could I truly move forward without looking back? Could I trust someone new after the betrayal I had experienced? In the weeks that followed, I noticed Rachel's silence. She hadn't called or texted since she left the house. A part of me wondered if she was waiting for me to break the silence, but I refused to be the one to reach out. She had made her decision, and now she had to live with it. Then, about a month after she had moved out, Rachel showed up at the house unexpectedly. I hadn't changed the locks, so her key still worked. I was in the kitchen when I heard the front door open, and there she stood, framed in the doorway with an unreadable expression on her face. "Ryan, can we talk?" she asked, her voice tentative, almost uncertain. I leaned against the kitchen counter, crossing my arms. "What is there to talk about, Rachel? You got what you wanted." She stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. "I didn't want to leave, Ryan. I thought we could make it work." "Make what work?" I asked, a bitter edge creeping into my voice. "You wanted to date other men, Rachel. That's not something you just come back from and pretend like it's no big deal." "I know," she said, her voice shaky. "I was wrong. I didn't realize how much it would hurt. I've missed you, Ryan. I want to come back." Her words lingered in the air. I had imagined this moment, her coming back, asking for another chance. But now, as she stood there, I realized something had shifted in me. The man who had been heartbroken over her decision wasn't standing in front of her anymore. "You can't just walk back and like nothing happened," I said, my voice firm. "You made your choice, Rachel. You wanted to explore other relationships, and now I'm not interested in going back to that." Her face crumpled as tears welled in her eyes. "Is there someone else?" she whispered. I hesitated, but there was no point in lying. "Yes, there is." Rachel flinched as if my words had physically struck her. She turned away, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I thought you'd wait for me," she whispered. "And I thought you'd stay faithful to me," I replied, my voice unwavering. "But we both know how that turned out." She stood there for a moment, struggling to find the right words. She glanced back at me, her expression a mixture of regret and disbelief. "I never wanted to lose you, Ryan. I thought we could get through anything. We could have," I said softly but resolutely. "But you chose a different path, and now here we are. You wanted to explore yourself, and I had to move on. This isn't just about your decision to see other men, it's about trust, Rachel. Once that's broken, it's hard to repair." Rachel wiped another tear from her cheek, nodding slowly as if she was finally coming to terms with the reality of what I was saying. "I guess I just thought you'd always be there." "I was," I replied quietly. "Until you weren't." The silence between us stretched out, heavy with everything left unsaid. Finally, Rachel spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "So, what now? I think it's time we both move forward," I said, feeling a strange sense of closure settle over me. "I'm filing for divorce. It's for the best." Her face crumpled at the words, and she nodded again, understanding that this was truly the end. "I never wanted it to come to this, but I understand." She left the house quietly that afternoon, and as the door closed behind her, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Our chapter had come to a close, and though it wasn't the ending I had once envisioned, it was the one that needed to happen. The weeks that followed were transformative. I filed for divorce, and Rachel didn't contest it. We divided our assets fairly, and I was able to keep the house. Rachel, I later learned through mutual friends, had moved in with Lindsay for a while before eventually renting a small apartment of her own. It seemed like she, too, was starting her new life. Meanwhile, my relationship with Hannah deepened. We spent more time together, cycling, kayaking, and just enjoying each other's company. Being with her felt like a breath of fresh air. There was no heavy baggage from the past weighing us down, no unresolved issues hanging over our heads, just two people who genuinely enjoyed being with one another. One evening, after a particularly long ride, we sat on the porch of her apartment, sipping cold beers as the sun set over the city. The conversation flowed easily, as it always did, but that night, Hannah seemed more thoughtful than usual. She looked at me, her brown eyes filled with curiosity and just a hint of nervousness. "Ryan, can I ask you something?" she said, breaking the comfortable silence between us. "Of course," I replied, leaning back in my chair, feeling more at peace than I had in a long time. "What's next for you?" she asked gently. "I mean, after everything with Rachel, do you see yourself ready for something serious again?" Her question hung in the air for a moment, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel overwhelmed by the thought of moving forward. Instead, I felt ready. "I think I am," I said honestly. "I've moved on. It wasn't easy, but I know now that I deserve to be happy again. What I had with Rachel wasn't happiness, it was a compromise. What I want now is something real." Hannah smiled softly, reaching for my hand. "I think we can build something real together." As we sat there, hand in hand, I felt a sense of certainty that had been missing for so long. A few months later, after the divorce was finalized, life began to take some unexpected, yet welcome turns. I received a promotion at work, something I had been working toward but hadn't anticipated so soon. My career was on track, and for the first time in a long time, I felt in control of my life. With things looking up, I decided it was time for a fresh start in every sense. I bought a new house, not too far from where I had lived before, but it felt like a world of difference. It wasn't just a new place, it was the symbol of a new beginning, a space where I could build a future that no longer revolved around Rachel. More importantly, Hannah and I decided to take the next step and move in together. It wasn't rushed, it felt right, the natural progression of where we were headed. One Saturday afternoon, as we were unpacking boxes and arranging furniture in our new home, Hannah paused, giving me a look that was both nervous and excited, something I hadn't seen from her before. "Ryan, there's something I need to tell you," she said softly. I set down the box I was holding, immediately curious. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, her eyes locking onto mine. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, it felt like the world stood still. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, but the strongest emotion that washed over me was joy. Pure, overwhelming joy. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice full of disbelief and excitement. Hannah nodded, her eyes shimmering with tears of happiness. "Yes. We're going to have a baby." I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly as an immense sense of happiness flooded through me. This was it, my fresh start, my second chance at life, at love, at family. Everything that had once felt broken now felt whole again. As we stood there, wrapped in each other's embrace, I realized something important. My story wasn't one of betrayal and heartache anymore. It was one of hope, new beginnings, and finding something better on the other side of the storm. Hannah and I got married that summer, surrounded by our closest friends and family. By Christmas, we welcomed our baby into the world, a beautiful little girl who brought even more joy into our lives than I ever thought possible. Sometimes, life takes you through storms you never thought you'd survive, but if you keep moving forward, you might just find something better waiting for you on the other side. This is the end of the story, friends. Share your opinion and thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and subscribe to Life Stories channel if you like this story. It will help us a lot in our development. We release new stories daily.